Welcome to Chamber Chat. I'm John Terr, President and CEO of the Boulder Chamber, and I welcome you to our bi-weekly opportunity to talk about issues that are important to our businesses, our economy, and our community at large. And today, we're going to be talking about law enforcement and criminal activity in our community, critical issue for the business community. And we're going to be having some great guests to talk about that with. First of all, we have our District Attorney, Michael Doherty, and our Police Chief, Maris Harold. And we're going to have a great conversation about these issues. But before we do, they have to tolerate some of my little PR announcements. First of all, on October 14th, we have our Economic Summit coming up, and we're going to be talking about the impacts of the pandemic on our community. But more importantly, what is the path forward for our community's economic vitality? So make sure to show up for that. We're going to have some great presentations on the current status of our economy, our current shape of our economy, as well as a perspective looking forward from a great guest speaker. So let's see on October 14th, make sure to sign up online. And then second, we have election season coming up. It's happening right now. The candidates are out in the field, and there are also some key critical ballot issues that impact business concerns. So check out online, boulderchamber.com/elections, and that's where you're going to get all the important information about those election issues and the positions that the Boulder Chamber is recommending on ballot initiatives, as well as a little information about the candidates running for election for City Council and some of the positions they are taking on issues of importance to the Boulder business community. And then finally, we have a very interesting topic for our Businesswomen Leadership Group on October 13th. That's a Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and we're going to be talking with some great guests like Chief Harold, Maris Harold, who is going to be talking about, first of all, what are some of the signs of domestic violence? How do you initiate conversations about this difficult topic? And how do you offer support for victims of domestic violence? So a very important topic, and always a great chance to get together and network with businesswomen leaders in our community. That's on October 13th. So make sure to sign up online. Okay, enough about these challenging or these fun topics at the Boulder Chamber. Important now to get to the discussion about criminal activity in our community and some of the approaches that our law enforcement officials are taking to address some of the challenges we're facing in that area. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to start with you, Chief Harold. What is the current state of criminal activity? Are we seeing increase in any particular areas? What can you tell us about it?
Well, thanks, John. I think the most important part for the business community to understand is that due to multiple reasons, and this just isn't Boulder, it's Boulder County, it's the state of Colorado, and these are national trends that are impacting communities. But what we're seeing is double-digit increases in property crime, and that does not move away from the downtown business community. I know that we've struggled and we've added some additional resources and crime prevention strategies into the downtown area that have been very effective, but we still continue to see these increases in property crime. When we think about crimes against people, the more violent crime, we are starting to see some of that stabilize, and we did have a rocky year in 2020, and so we continue, and I think that we will continue to see increases in property crime for various reasons, and we can talk about some of those reasons, but I think it's important for the business community to understand the crime trends. We have that new community dashboard out there where people can get on, they can look at things spatially, they can look at temporal time patterns that concern us, so they're part of this crime fighting strategy with us. But there is no doubt that property crime continues to be problematic, not just in Boulder, but across the country. And unfortunately, some of the bigger cities in the state of Colorado are seeing double-digit increases in violent crime.
Wow.
And we, luckily, are not seeing that type of violence. And I'm sure the DA's office sees the same patterns that we see. But so we all have to be vigilant. Give me the word.
Vigilant.
Vigilant, thank you.
Team effort.
Team effort on these types of property crimes, because the majority of them are very preventable.
Gotcha.
And so we have to understand how to target harden our businesses, our residences, our property, And so we continue to get that education out, but it will continue to be problematic. And we're taking a hard stance on crime prevention tips for the community and the businesses. But I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page, because this is important, and nobody wants to become a victim of crime. And property crime, all the research indicates that when you're a victim of a property crime, it is just as damaging to people as when you're a victim of violent crime.
Yeah.
Right?
I
And
absolutely.
so I don't want anybody being victimized by
Yeah.
crime. It's very harmful. So yeah, that's what
I
we're
appreciate
saying.
that. And I will say this, critical to have that understanding of what actually are the incidents of criminal activity. And I've gone to your website and appreciate the data that you're now making available so folks in our community understand the nature of the criminal activity and the trends. And maybe I'll just ask you, Michael, can you tell us just, are you seeing the same thing in your office, sort of county-wide? And then, how does that compare maybe to other communities in the region?
Sure, and yes, we are seeing the same thing throughout the entire county, but first I want to thank you, John, for having
Pleasure.
the Chief and I on today.
Yep.
We're sitting out here in the rain, folks, at the Boulder County Justice Center, but it's great to be together with you today and talking about this really
Absolutely.
important issue. And the Chief is absolutely right. It's a complex problem, but we recognize it as a real problem. So we, both the Chief and I together,
It is a team effort, we hear.
yes, have had a lot of opportunities to talk to members of the community. Community outreach is really important to us. So from those conversations, we recognize how much of an impact property crimes have on the community in Boulder. A lot of folks move here or love living here because of the quality of life. And when their bike is being stolen or their car is being broken into, that has a direct and terrible impact on that quality of life that we all cherish in Boulder County. Boulder is still such a safe and wonderful community to live and work. Relatively speaking, to other counties throughout the nation, Boulder County is incredibly safe. But we have to recognize what the Chief has talked about, which he's absolutely right. We've seen a dramatic increase in property crimes here in Boulder County and throughout the state of Colorado and the country as a whole. So we continue to see that. I'm really grateful for and excited about some of the progress that the Boulder Police Department has made in terms of targeted patrols and trying to address problematic areas and doing as much crime prevention outreach as they can. And we certainly join in those efforts by having town halls and crime prevention bulletins that go out all the time, because to the extent that these can be prevented, we need your help. We need the business community's help to prevent these crimes from taking place. I am grateful as district attorney for many things, but one of the things I'm grateful for is violent crime has remained relatively steady during the pandemic. One only needs to check the front page of the Denver Post on any given day to see that that's not true in other jurisdictions where violent crime has spiked, shootings have spiked. So we deal with two real issues during the pandemic in terms of increases. It's property crimes and domestic violence. So I want to second what John said earlier about tuning in for that October 13th presentation with the Chief. I think that's really important. Those are the two most problematic areas that have gone up during the pandemic. And again, I think it's a complex problem tied to a number of factors, including the stress and isolation, particularly with regards to domestic violence.
Well, let me ask you this. Are you having an understanding, either just through your analysis or just even your belief about what might be leading to this increase in certain kinds of property and domestic violence increase?
Sure. So I think for property crimes and domestic violence, it's somewhat different. I think for property crimes, it's the financial stress created by the pandemic. I think people with mental health needs and substance abuse needs, they're being disconnected from treatment that they may have had previously, just like all of us when we're sitting out here in the rain, right? Because we can't meet in person without a mask right now. And I think for people who need treatment, it's been harder. I also think, just on a very practical level, that we have fewer people going to the offices and fewer people visiting businesses or being out on the street at night, and that affords perpetrators extra opportunity to commit crimes. So I'm reminded of having been a prosecutor in New York City for many years and growing up there. If you have two people on a subway train at midnight, it's far more likely that one person may commit a crime against another. If you have 62 people on that same subway train, it's far less likely to happen because of the number of witnesses and good Samaritans who are there. So I think it's a complex problem that we're continuing to struggle with and try to focus on. I do think we're making a lot of progress. On domestic violence, it's a lot more about the isolation and control that an abuser has over their victim. And victims are being cut off due to the pandemic from their normal sources of support. By normal, I mean if they go to work and they talk to an employee, they get together with family members and someone says, hey, what happened to your eye? That conversation can often generate a call to law enforcement. We're really fortunate in Boulder County that we have such outstanding women and men in law enforcement, including the Boulder Police Department. And specialized investigators who help on domestic violence cases, but I think those are some of the complex issues that are driving the increases in Boulder County in property crime and domestic violence.
Interesting. And are you seeing the same sort of causes of the kinds of crime increases that we've seen?
Yeah, the DA is absolutely correct. The majority of crime, and this includes shootings and homicides, any type of crime, most of the crime is crimes of opportunity. And so when everything shuts down, I can tell you clusters where it'll cluster because there's not eyes and ears on those locations. That's just research supported across the board. And so this is why it's important we do things like this and we keep the business community and everybody else in tune to what's going on, because really the crime prevention techniques that we are providing to the community members are so important at a time like this when we don't have the eyes and ears out as much as we do in the past. So, just for example, lighting, cameras, good locks. For businesses, have somebody greet your customers when they come in the doors. A lot of the issues that we see, the smash and grabs, is because there's people in the back. And I walk up and down Pearl Street as well, and as I'm walking around, I tell people, boy, it'd be great to have somebody step outside into the front foyer of some of these businesses to deter some of this activity that we see. And I couldn't agree more with Michael, is that unfortunately drug addiction and mental health play a key role in the problems that we see. And we are both working with state legislators, people in the community that are much more savvy than I am in mental health response and drug addiction options, to try to get seed funding to address some of the issues that I see are chronic in Boulder. And so it really requires a full court press and everybody being involved. And I think that that's the way we make progress moving forward. But it will take all of us understanding these complexities to make an impact.
I hear you. And I get the, go ahead.
No, I was just going to give you one case example.
Please.
If I could. We had an individual in the community in 2019 who was arrested 100 times. So think about that, 100 arrests in 365 days. Obviously all low-level offenses, very low-level offenses, otherwise they wouldn't be getting out as quickly as he was. But think about the impact he was having on the community and our business partners throughout Boulder, as well as his own life, but the victims and just community welfare and well-being overall.
Yeah.
We got him in our mental health diversion program, and in 2020 he was arrested once. So he went from 100 arrests and having an outsized negative impact on the community to one arrest for the calendar year 2020. That program is maxed out. We need more help from our state legislature to have more resources in place to deal with those issues. Ideally, we'd have more mental health treatment available in the community, because people shouldn't have to hit the doors of the jail or the courthouse to get the treatment they need. And I think we all know too many people who struggle with mental illness that goes untreated because it's expensive and difficult to get treatment that can be provided at a high level on a consistent basis. So as a state, we need to see the legislature invest more funding in our people and also in the programs we have here in the justice system, because they make a real difference in community safety and well-being.
I got it, and that's part of that full court press.
Right.
And of course, one of those elements is supporting our law enforcement officers and their activities. So I guess I'm just going to ask Chief Harold, what is coming down the line for you in terms of support and new initiatives to help address some of the criminal activity from a law enforcement perspective?
Well, first, John, thanks for asking that question. It has been a challenging year and a half in policing, but especially Boulder PD. We are struggling getting back to normal operations after the mass casualty event on March 22nd. We are down significantly now in the police department, and we are really aggressively going across the country for a recruiting strategy. And I'm hopeful. Today we had 33 young men and women take our physical tests. I'm hopeful that in the next couple months, I hope not, next couple months, that we start to see this stabilization. This happens after mass casualty events when an officer is killed. We usually lose 15 to 20%. But obviously the optics of policing is not the same as it was when I came on the police department. And you're dealing with new generations of police officers that are not concerned with the same thing I was concerned with when I came on. And so we're pivoting and we're trying new recruiting strategies. One thing that I am committed to is being a data-driven agency, and the police have accepted that. These young officers want to be more part of the community, want to help the community, but they want to use data and technology. So I think we're on the forefront of some really big developments in the next few months as far as the police officers understanding their own data, using technology with our capacity in a really positive way. I think the DA and I both realize that jail is not the best option for a lot of people. However, Michael and I also agree that we have repeat offenders in this community that are ravaging the community, and those are the people, places, and victims that we need to focus all our resources on.
Definitely.
So just understanding that for the police officers, that we have repeat offenders, repeat victimization, and repeat places that create these opportunity structures for bad things to happen. That's where our focus has to be, and that's where it's going to be next year. And I am hopeful that we continue to have this really good recruiting strategy, crime prevention strategy, and if we can get the businesses and the community members to help us, I think we can drive some of these numbers back down.
I love it. And you mentioned some strategies, lighting, cameras, et cetera, that might be helpful from the business side perspective. I'm just going to turn it to Michael. Maybe you can tell us also from your perspective, how can the business community be a partner with our law enforcement officials in helping to drive down incidents of criminal activity?
Well, I think first and perhaps most importantly is just alerting law enforcement to some of the issues that you're struggling with. So if you have a particular individual or group of individuals who are troubling you or those that work in your business, let Boulder PD know, reach out to law enforcement. Don't assume that nothing's going to be done, because I can tell you that the chief and the outstanding officers of the Boulder PD are committed to doing their very best to address these issues. I see it all the time as a resident of Boulder, but also as someone who works as closely as I do with the men and women of the police department. They're committed to public safety in Boulder County. It's the top priority. So reach out to law enforcement and let them know what we can do. As I said, often it's a small number of people having an outsized impact on the community. So we want to make sure we're focusing our resources not only at the law enforcement level, but here at the Justice Center on making sure those cases are handled appropriately.
Yeah.
And they were helping people get back on the right track whenever possible, but also holding people responsible for their conduct and making sure that we maintain community safety. The other thing I would mention to our business community is really reinforcing to the state legislators, and we have some great ones here in Boulder County, but throughout the state of Colorado, the importance of having resources for law enforcement and also the mental health programs that we have in place, such as mental health diversion and our drug treatment programs. We don't do nearly enough in our state. We rank in the bottom 10 in the nation in terms of those resources being available. And we're going to continue to see the reoffense rate, the likelihood of someone going on to commit another criminal offense, being higher than it is in other states, up until the point where we start to invest in our people and do a better job of that. So that's one thing we'd love to put the pressure on those in state government to provide more funding. I will say some good news. We just saw a couple jurors out here as we were getting started. We're back to full trial capacity here at the Justice Center. So everyone's wearing masks, but we're trying a ton of cases every week. That's helped a lot, not just in terms of trials being held and conducted, but also once you have trials going, people start to accept responsibility for their cases, enter guilty pleas, and receive the appropriate sentence. So that's been happening a lot over the past couple months, and I'm really grateful to the terrific staff we have here at the District Attorney's Office. They work incredibly hard, and they're honored to work with law enforcement on behalf of this community every day. So those are some of the things we're focused on right now. And I've just had a couple meetings, as you know, John, with folks from the cyclist community, so focused on vehicular fatalities and also bike thefts. In fact, my brother's bike was recently stolen from Full Cycle, so I hear about the difficulty it's caused him quite frequently. But recognizing that those cases have an impact, particularly vehicular fatalities, and working closely with our community leaders to make sure we're doing everything we can. So much like the cyclist community, don't hesitate to reach out to me, and I know the same is true for the chief as well, and have direct conversations with us about what you're seeing and what you're dealing with.
Good. That's really great. Helpful tips for businesses. Anything else to add to that, Maris?
Just one thing. If the business community especially, if they want one of our crime prevention officers to come down and do a full assessment of how they can target harden their property and understand the dynamics, we would be glad to do that. My next community forum with the community will be a presentation on the patterns and trends that we see with crime, not only downtown but across the city. And I would just ask the community, please don't leave your vehicle unlocked. Don't leave your vehicle with keys in the car running. We see that so much in the city of Boulder. And
don't leave your guns in your unlocked car.
Yep.
Longmont last December had 17 cars broken into in the month and 15 guns stolen from those cars. So when you think about where those guns are going, what they're being used for,
Sure.
so making sure that we secure our firearms and not just leave cars unlocked with the belongings in there, especially if it's a firearm.
Yep. And lock your garage doors. We see so many bikes being stolen out of garages, either attached or unattached. And we have motivated offenders in the community for all the reasons that we discussed. So please target harden your properties. And if we can be any assistance, I'll send a crime prevention officer to any building to help out with that. But together, we can always do what we want to do. So thanks, John, for this opportunity.
John,
It's a
can I
great
mention
thing.
one other thing?
Please do. Yeah.
As the attorney in the group, I talk too much, so I recognize that.
No, haven't noticed that.
No, the one other thing I want to mention is we have a city council election coming up, and I'm not going to talk politics. I would just say, as you're considering who to support for the city council election, looking at where they are on law enforcement and criminal justice and public safety, that's more important now than ever. So I really encourage folks to take a close look at the candidates, and we have some great people running, but just take a close look. And if you're watching this, I assume it's because you're concerned about crime in Boulder County and in the city of Boulder. So take a look at the candidates with that in mind, and I think that'd be a really helpful and informed decision to make.
Yeah, and so we're going to helpfully help educate our businesses through our election coverage as well. So this is all part of that conversation. I will say this, that you mentioned Mayor's, Chief Merrill,
That's it.
in person. It is a partnership, and so the business community with our law enforcement officials, we stand ready to support you in your great work, and we are so fortunate in this community to have progressive leaders who are driving our initiatives in law enforcement, but also helping to understand how do we drive also the mental health services and those things that help prevent recidivism, that help get rid of or reduce criminal activity that when it begins. So I thank you guys for your service to our
thank you, John.
community.
Thank
I thank
you.
your teams who are doing amazing work every day under difficult conditions. So
Well, thanks, John. I really appreciate that. I appreciate the community support. I will take this opportunity again to thank the community for the overwhelming support that we still receive from the 10 victims of the King Soopers event, and I'll never forget that. So thank you.
well, in their honor, let me thank you very much. And then I'll just say that that's it for our chamber chat. I thank our DA, Michael Doherty, and our Police Chief, Meryl Terrell, for being with us. And also remember, as it was mentioned, important election coming up. We've got ballot issues. We hopefully give you education about the candidates on these important issues. So go to our election website, and we'll see you next time on Chamber